So when one team leaves another city, another team grows elsewhere, and you get the want of, will we ever have a pro team back? I mean, you gotta sympathize with like Atlanta in the NHL. They had two teams: the Atlanta Flames before they moved in 1980 to Calgary, and the Atlanta Thrashers before they moved in 2011 to Winnipeg, aka Winnipeg. You gotta think about Kansas City. They used to have a basketball team called the Kings before they moved to Sacramento, and also they also had hockey for the Kansas City Scouts before they moved to Colorado, who then moved to New Jersey. But one of the saddest NFL stories, other than the Cleveland Browns, which I had already covered, for relocation, is the Baltimore Colts. And now the city of Baltimore lost their team for a while, gained it back through the Cleveland Browns, and are a better team. But anyway, I know I will be doing a what if about one of the Indianapolis Colts teams. But let's talk about the Baltimore Colts. And let's talk about the Baltimore Colts history. And yes, that marching band will be featured. So get ready. I said, are you ready? Are you ready for some Cutter What If NFL football? A weekend invasion! Yeah, it's Cutter talking to you live. We got the hits and the misses. So come join me for all the fun. All the rowdy friends come in. It's the weekend, y'all. Are you ready? Yeah, let's do this, baby. Yes. So the Baltimore Colts were born out of the AAFC in a sense. As I look at the history of the Baltimore Colts, it's the fact that there was an AAFC team called the Baltimore Colts, and would actually join the NFL in the merger alongside San Francisco and Cleveland. But after being 1-11, the league dissolved the team and all that. Baltimore was not too happy and all of that. They wanted a revival and all of that. So, anyway, Baltimore got their team back. Well, NFL Commissioner Burt Bell told the Baltimore mayor that you must sell 15,000 season tickets within 6 weeks to re-enter the NFL. Fortunately, though, Baltimore did it in 4 weeks, so that meant the NFL had to keep their promise. So anyway, New York had a team called the New York Yanks in the NFL, and then it was sold to Dallas, but unfortunately they only won 1 game. And then they sold the assets to Baltimore. So the Baltimore Colts were born again, if you will. Not to be religious or anything. So the Baltimore Colts were decent and all that. Of course, they would get their heyday in 1958, 5 years after they came back to the NFL, as they had a magical season and they would face the Giants in the what they call the greatest game ever played, and the game that brought pro football into American lexicon in a massive way through the television and all that. And then they had overtime, and that fan on the field actually was an NBC employee buying time so that they could get the microwave feed better. Regardless of that, the Baltimore Colts were a very decent franchise and all that. In the 60s, they rode Johnny Unitas, and he helped them do well. 1968, the Baltimore Colts were heavily favored to win Super Bowl III against those pesky AFL teams, the New York Jets. And Baltimore had their own problems. I mean, Johnny Unitas was hurt, so they had to go with Earl Morrall, who won all but 1 game. And so the Colts were heavily favored by more than 14 points. Joe Elway gave his famous "We'll win, I guarantee it" speech, and lo and behold, what did the Jets do? They won the game. The Colts were embarrassed. The Colts 2 years later would come back to the Super Bowl in Super Bowl V against Dallas. Despite the fact that their opponents, the Cowboys, had the Super Bowl MVP in Chuck Howley, the Colts won what was called the Blender Bowl because of all those turnovers in Super Bowl V, and the Colts won the game 16-13 on a Jim O'Brien field goal. with a few seconds left. Baltimore would be chasing the Dragon in the 70s, if you will, winning divisions but just not doing well in the playoffs. The season before the one I'm talking about, the 77 Colts, is that the Colts were hosting Pittsburgh in the divisional round, got their butts handed to them, and the fans just left in droves. Which was a good thing that they left early because a small Piper aircraft crashed into the upper deck of Memorial Stadium, dripping fuel, and basically the owner of the plane had a hangover or whatever. Because of how many fans left the stadium and all that, there were no casualties. Baltimore, after this game, primarily, I mean, after the 77 season, primarily were faltering and all that. Brett Jones was let go. Everyone just didn't want to be a Baltimore Colt guy and all that. So anyway, the Baltimore Colts would fumble. They tried to hire Frank Kush as head coach, which seemed like a good idea because of his Arizona State days. But of course, they're tainted because of his whole abusing players and all that through practices and all that. So anyway, they got Frank Kush, but then, of course, that was why John Elway betrayed Colts fans by saying he's not going to go to Baltimore, even though he was the number one pick in the 1983 draft. Because not only did he think the Colts organization was disoriented and all that, but Frank Kush was a taskmaster. And Elway should know because he played in Stanford and his father Jack coached the Cardinal. And of course, that was when in the Pac-10 days. So Baltimore would plod along, and then in 1984, Robert Irsay would betray Baltimore by moving the team to Indianapolis, practically because Baltimore did not pass a proposition on sports stadiums for taxpayer money. So they go into Indianapolis. Baltimore would have to wait till 1995 when Cleveland had their own problems, and they swooped in and took the Browns and made them the Baltimore Ravens because the Ravens were where Edgar Poe wrote his poem, and he was a native Baltimorean, or whatever you want to call it. The fact of the matter was that Baltimore got their NFL team back. And in the process, they didn't need to worry or rely on Canadian football as the CFL decided to go to the States to get financially viable. Unfortunately for them, it didn't work out that way. Many teams were terrible, but Baltimore was the class act of the CFL US. Fortunately, there would be a silver lining as the Stallions, as they were known as, their players would be moved to Montreal, and Montreal would get their CFL team back after 9 years of being defunct. And the Alouettes have had some great Grey Cup moments and all that. So it worked out. It really did. So let's take a look at the 1977 Baltimore Colts in their last great hurrah in Baltimore. Of course, I'm not going to talk about their time in Indianapolis. That's for a different video. So it was the silver anniversary of the Baltimore Colts being back in the NFL. Their 25th season. Ted Marchibroda was a good head coach in his third year. And the Colts won 10 games. They were tied with Miami. But because they had the better conference record, the Colts would be going to the playoffs and the Dolphins would miss. Joe Thomas was a decent GM, but then he was fired because he was having a power struggle with Ted Marchibroda. So Dick Semensky, a former Baltimore Colts center, was made to be the GM. In the NFL draft, they didn't really draft that well. And all that. Nothing to talk about. Robert Irsay was the president. The GM was Dick Semensky. The assistant GM was Ernie Accorsi, with Ted Marchibroda as the head coach. Quarterbacks, Burt Jones was the top guy. Bill Troop, a guy that looked like Donald Sutherland's character in Animal House, was the backup. If you must know. Rosie Leaks and Lydell Mitchell made up the running back. Dual wide receivers Roger Carr, Freddie Scott, and Ricky Thompson. Tight ends would be Raymond Chester. Offensive line, Forrest Blue, Ken Huff was there. George Kunst, Ken Mendenhall. Defensive line, Millers, Greg Johnson, and Rick Barnes. Linebackers, Stan White and Dan Dickel. Defensive backs, Lyle Blackwood, Bruce Laird, and Ray Olam. Tony Linhart, your catcher. David Lee, your punter. Colts are up 5-0. They beat Seattle, the Jets. Buffalo, Miami, and Kansas City before losing to the Patriots. They actually had a 3-game losing streak, losing to Denver, Miami, and Detroit, but beating the Pats 30-24, and they needed that win. They really needed that win because that was going to get them to the AFC East, as you see here, 10-4. Both team Baltimore and Miami were 10-4, both 6-2 in the division, but Baltimore had the better conference record. Pats won 9 games too. So anyway, Baltimore was put as a 2 seed and would play the Oakland Raiders in the divisional round. And all that. So it was a tight game and all that. This goes to the post. There was a struggle. Oakland did score first on a Clarence Davis touchdown. Then Bruce Laird had a pick six, and then a field goal by Linhart made it 10-7 Baltimore. In the second half, Dave Casper scored on a touchdown run on reception. Marshall Johnson had a kick return for a touchdown. A blocked Baltimore punt meant that Stabler threw the Casper 21-17 Raiders, but both teams would run through. And Baltimore thought they were going to win. With 2:55 left in the fourth quarter, he said that this would be huge. Stabler would give Clarence Davis his first down. Following an incomplete pass with 2:17, Tom Flores, who was the offensive coordinator at the time for the Raiders, called for a second down pass play, designed to go to one of the wide receivers running an in pallets, and told Stabler to take a peek at the ghost to the post because Casper's last name was the same name as a friendly ghost in comic books. So anyway, Flores wanted Stabler to look for Casper because Casper was trying to draw away the opposing team's safeties. And Casper would run the deep post pattern and Stabler threw a high arcing pass. It looked like he was overthrown. But Casper made a direction change and made an over the head catch. That was the signature moment. They were down at the 14. They went for the field goal with 30 seconds left, tied the game, went to overtime, and then Casper got a 10-yard run in the 43 seconds into the second overtime. To this day, it's still the fifth longest in pro football history, this game. And the Raiders won 37-31 and all that. So that's what happened. But little did people know that this was the last time the Colts franchise would get to the playoffs until 1987. So they spent 10 years in mediocrity and all that. And then, of course, the team moved to Indy. It's a little tainted because there was a strike in 1987, and then they used replacement players. So the next time the Colts went to the playoffs in a non-strike shortened season was 1995, when they shocked the world by going to the AFC title game against the Steelers and had the Steelers beaten as Jim Harbaugh threw, yes, that Jim Harbaugh, threw a high arcing ball that landed in the lap of, I can't remember the Colts receiver, but it landed in the lap of a receiver, and if he closed it, that would have been a Hail Mary for the win, but it wasn't. But the next time the Colts won double-digit games was 1999, and that was Peyton's second season. So thus, it was a harsh time for the Colts franchise. They just couldn't get that 10th win, which made them almost all but given a playoff spot. So the fact of the matter is that the Colts would falter. But what would happen if the Colts did get to the AFC title game and all that? All right, so the 77 Colts would have went to the AFC title game against the Broncos. Yes, the 77 Broncos were 12-2, and yes, Denver was hosting the AFC title game. Because that's when the Raiders went to Denver and got cheated because they had a ball that was, the runner was down on the ground at the one, but they called it a fumble. Now, Denver got lucky as Raiders thought they got the guy down, but all of a sudden, Denver got the touchdown and all that, which was stupid. They said it was called the big lie, as Al Davis said, and that was one of the main reasons why he thought that the Raiders were being cheated. Nevertheless, this is in Denver, so the Baltimore Colts play the Broncos. If they win, they play the Cowboys in Super Bowl 12. The rules state that if I play it that way, the other conference gets unaffected. Every like we don't mess with it. And this is the first game in which weather actually does play a factor in this game. Through Wikipedia, I found out that the actual game was played in 20 Fahrenheit weather. So logically, that's what I would do. All right. Baltimore wins, we keep going. If they don't, they don't. And Baltimore played Denver. Baltimore kicked off to Denver, but Lyle Blackwood made an interception to the Broncos 40. Nothing happens. Jim Turner later in the first quarter had a 48-yard field goal, which was no good. And the Colts on a 9-play, 71-yard drive it down to the 3, in which Rosie Leaks pounds ahead for a 3-yard touchdown run to make it 7-0. Second quarter sees a lot of punts, but then Jim Turner hits a 31-yard field goal with a minute 34 left to make it 7-3. Baltimore would try desperately. And they get to the 23 of Denver, so Linhart went for 40 yards, and it bounced off the upright, no good. Colts still up 7-3 after 2. In the third quarter, the Colts went first, but they had to punt. Denver would do a 6-play, 44-yard play as Denver actually got lucky because Lido was stripped of the ball, but they got it back. Otis Armstrong would hit a 4-yard touchdown run, and it's now 10-7 for those pesky Broncos. Burt Jones was picked up by Tom Jackson. Yes, that Tom Jackson from ESPN NFL Countdown. And then after they got first and goal at the 6, the Broncos couldn't get anywhere. They lost 2 yards. In total, in 3 plays, Turner would hit a 25-yard field goal down the pike, 13-7. And came the fourth quarter, when Craig Morton was picked off. Yes, that Craig Morton was picked off by Ray Oldham. There were plays. Baltimore, with 6 minutes left, got the ball and had first and goal with 2:29 left. Metro was stopped at the line. Leaks couldn't do anything, but then Baltimore passed to Dowdy in the end zone for a touchdown. They go to the extra point. It's good. 14-13. The Broncos would get the ball at their 35 to start. Armstrong got a 4-yard run. Morton overthrows Dolben is incomplete. And then he gets sacked by Stan White, and then he underthrows Rick Upchurch, so the Colts would get the ball back, running down to 21 seconds left. Metro would go for a 46-yard field goal and would miss wide right. Denver would get the ball back. We threw the ball to Rick Upchurch for a 40-yard play. Unfortunately, that was not enough time, and the Baltimore Colts win 14-13 and would be going to the Super Bowl 12. The scoring summary: Rosie leaks a 3-yard touchdown run in the first quarter, Turner field goal in the second quarter for Denver, then Otis Anderson touchdown, Turner 25-yard field goal. But then Jones would throw to Glenn Doherty in the end zone. The Colts win 14-13. Lydell Mitchell was named player of the game. Colts 7 for 17 on third down, 1 for 1 on fourth down. The Broncos 4 for 13 on third, 0-1 on fourth down. Rushing yards went to Broncos 154-84. Passing yards, Baltimore did better than Denver by a long shot, 187-96. Mitchell 24 runs for 66 yards and a touchdown. Otis Anderson 13 runs for 80 yards and a touchdown. Receiving, Lydell Mitchell was 73 yards receiving for Lydell Mitchell. That's why he was named player of the game. Burt Jones 17 for 25, 2-8 touchdown pick. Morton 10 for 23 with 2 interceptions. Weiss threw a 40-yard play. That was him. 2 interceptions. Ray Oldham and Lyle Blackwood for Baltimore. Tom Jackson, an interception. Tony Linhart misses from 40 and 46. Turner 31 and 25 made 48-yard field goal miss. So now they'll head to Dallas. I think Dallas was the home team, right? Yeah, it was at the Superdome. I know that. Superdome. At the Superdome. I think the Broncos. Yeah, stop. Yeah, okay. There's all set. Let's see what the Super Bowl brings for the Baltimore Colts. Well, Baltimore got the ball first, but they had to punt. And then Dallas went down the field for a 33-yard catch by chance by Everin Herrera. But he goes wide right, and he failed. Well, Staubach was sacked, making it harder. The Colts would get a 4.77-yard drive as at their 36. Burt Jones made a short pass to Lido Mitchell, and somehow he speeds Stenfield past Dallas' defense. A 64-yard touchdown, and the Colts are up 7-0. Baltimore up 7-0. And then Tony Linhart, after a 13-play, 60-yard drive, kicked the field goal to make it 10-0. Um, Dallas had first and goal for a touchdown by Preston Pearson, but then they were called for holding, so they couldn't do anything. They had to go fourth down on the 6. Herrera put up a 23-yard field goal to make it 10-3. Dallas was under 2 minutes left, went down the field as Newhouse would get a 13-yard touchdown run, tie the game on the extra point. Jones has to throw in the end zone for Scott to end the first half. Nothing happens. In the third, Dallas gets the ball back. 6 plays, 44 yards. Herrera, 39-yard field goal through the uprights. And then the Colts had their own field goal chance by Linhart, 39 yards up the middle. Stan White would make an interception off of Staubach. Into the fourth quarter, when the Colts had first and goal and missed, and then Leaks ran the ball to the 2. McCauley got a 1-yard play. Oh, what? Oh, shoot, I went the wrong way. It was supposed to be for New Orleans. TLTL. Too little, too late. Anyway, McCauley. Well, it's indoors anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, McCauley gets 1 yard. They go for it on fourth down instead of going for the 3 points. But they failed. Dallas would actually have to start from their 1 yard line. Dorsett got 8-yard play. They went down the field, first and goal. Preston Pearson gets stopped for 3-yard loss, but Tony Dorsett then gets the ball. Touchdown, and the Cowboys are up 20-13. They kick a field goal just for kicks as the Cowboys win 23-13. I know it should have been at the Superdome. I don't know what the heck happened. I forgot to change it to neutral site, I guess. But I think Dallas would have won anyway, so we'll just leave it at that. So Jones stood lie down Mitchell for a touchdown, make it 7-0. Linhart made it 10-0 on a field goal. Herrera field goal. Newhouse 13-yard run. Had field goals in the third. In the fourth quarter, Dorsett touchdown run and Herrera 25-yard play. Dorsett is player of the game. Colts 5 for 12 on third down. Cowboys 7 for 13. They ran the ball down. The Colts go at 262-93. Passing yards 201-95 for Baltimore. Lineout Mitchell 76 yards on the ground. Dorsett 151 on the ground with a touchdown. Newhouse put up 107 on the ground. So that's what they did. Dorsett and Newhouse just ran all over Baltimore. Staubach 13 for 19, 126 and a pick. Jones 17 for 26, 235. Leonard made a 42 and 39 field goals, and Herrera 23, 39, 25 missed a 33-yard field goal. But nevertheless, Dallas got their butts handed to them. I wonder what would have happened if I went with the Superdome. Yeah, Dallas would have won. So we'll just take it at that. So yeah, the Colts would have lost the Super Bowl anyway. But at least they could have marched on, and maybe Baltimore would have built a new stadium. Who knows? Who cares? Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond, and